If I'm stubborn enough to go find a lawnmower to huff gas out of so I can get high, I got to be stubborn enough to walk this stuff out.
This life's amazing.
Yeah.
And I just made it through another day.
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with you? Why do you get ungrateful so fast?
Big Book Brian! Oh! Every day getting blasted! Smoking weed, trapping on the acid! Huffing gas out of the tank! Blacked out in bush and snorting crime! Getting drunk every day! The alcoholic life's in the only way! And rehab God, you got my attention! Now rocking me into the fourth dimension! Recovery! With Big Book Brian! Recovery! With Big Book Brian! Recovery! With Big Book Brian! Speaking recovery with Big Book Brian! Recovery! With Big Book Brian! Recovery! With Big Book Brian! Recovery! With Big Book Brian! Speaking recovery with Big Book Brian!
Welcome back to the Section 9 Studios, home of the Recovery Idiot, the #1 podcast for people who know what Narcan tastes like. My name is Leroy. I'm a recovered alcoholic addict. If you like what you see here, please tell your friends to go to therecoveryidiot.com, where you can find other videos of people, you can find songs, you can find naked pictures of me. That's not really there, but you can look. Please tell your friends to check it out. And here I am today with my friend who we call Big Book Brian. And we call him that because his name is Brian, and he would read the big book to us at Blake's house. If anyone's ever heard me speak, there's several points in my life where I had very big changes happen. And those changes occurred because of things that we discussed in our big book meeting. So before we find out how you got to Blake's, because I know how I got to Blake's, it wasn't good. How did you get to the point where you needed a big book?
All right. Well, thank you. First off, my name is Brian. I am an alcoholic. So I guess my journey getting to Blake's house started back probably 6th grade, summer after 6th grade, when I first started experimenting with drugs and alcohol. I grew up in a normal family. You know, I saw my dad and mom drink a little bit here and there. It was never, I don't know, wasn't really around, I guess. I mean, it was around, but not like, I didn't grow up in an alcoholic family. But something about alcohol and drugs really excited me. I liked the way it made me feel. I liked the things that I was doing on it. I liked the way that it made my mind feel. The way it made me feel like I was part of something now. Also kind of quieted a little bit of this noise that was going on in my brain.
They call that ADHD now, but back then we were just being kids. Always did crazy things. Always had crazy thoughts going through my head. Always talked to people who weren't really there. I mean, I don't know if everyone did that, but I did. We were messes and we didn't have medication at the time.
Yeah, my medication was in
We
drugs
found
and
our
alcohol.
own medication.
Yeah, for sure. I think the first time I got really drunk was in 7th grade. I was that annoying drunk kid at a party. We got into like the high school party with my friend Lawrence, and his brother was in high school. So we got to go with him. We grabbed our skateboards and we're like, we're going to go to a high school party. I remember drinking a bunch, and I don't remember what happened after that, but I woke up in the morning with a hospital ID bracelet on my wrist. And that's kind of the story of my drinking and drugs.
So your first real party, you ended up in the hospital?
Yes.
That's a good start.
Well, so what happened was, you know, I wake up in the morning, my mom and my dad and stepmom told me what happened is they came home from a movie and they saw this kid's feet sticking out of the bushes a couple houses down from ours. And it was actually me. And they took me to the hospital, got my stomach pumped and all that stuff. It wasn't until I went to school from Lawrence where I found out exactly what happened. I was that annoying drunk kid trying to hit on every chick and whatever. And so they got really scared because I passed out. And Lawrence's brother said, we got to get this guy home. And Lawrence says, well, I kind of know where he lives. And so they just drove by and pushed me out in the bushes, you know, and I loved it though. I absolutely loved it. Like that was, it just made me feel like, wow, there's got to be more of this out there.
I remember my first real, like, drinking to puking party. I was older because I could drive at the time. I was a late bloomer. I didn't start getting blackout drunk to 16 or 17. I was at my friend Rick Lynch, who was like his older brother, James Patrick Lynch. He was Patrick James Lynch. Well, James Patrick Lynch was 21. So we got his birth certificate and social security card, and we all got fake IDs. So me, Rick, Chris, we were all James Patrick Lynch's on our driver's license. Because you're all using, it'd say
totally gonna
duplicate,
work.
but back in New Jersey, that's how it worked. I was at a party with Rick, and we were at this kid's trailer. He had a party, and I asked for the ashtray. And when they passed me the ashtray, I threw up.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember going outside, and it was winter, and I was freezing, but hosing myself off. And that was the first time I got dropped off on the front lawn. I stumbled in, apparently, at some point, and I remember waking up very hungover, my mom yelling at me. She wasn't too happy, but
Yeah.
sounds exciting.
But
as
wasn't
the
it-
hospital visit. But it was when I woke up the next day, and my mom was mad at me, and I was a little hungover, and I still had schoolwork to do because I was going to night school. It never made me think that was bad. It made me think that was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And everyone talked about it when Leroy puked in the ashtray.
Yeah, and the crowd that I was running with, like, I got one scene from my folks back home, you know, like, oh, you're in trouble, this is going to be horrible. And then you get to school, and you're like the hero, you know, because the crew that you're with, they're like, oh, man, you did this, you did that, it was amazing, you know, and I dug that. My self-esteem was so low, you know, that I needed, like, that boost. I mean, I was a skinny little kid with these massive buck teeth, and I felt like I didn't fit in. So where do you go to the bottom of the barrel and you fit in there, no problem. So that continued on through 7th grade, you know, just the normal getting drunk and waking up under a car instead of inside the house and stupid stuff like that. The middle of my 8th grade year, I didn't really have any big consequences. I mean, sure, I got in trouble and I got things taken away, but I would always sneak out. And the middle of my 8th grade year, I decided in all my
Wisdom.
Oh, yeah, to sell weed at school. And I was going to sell it out of my locker. And my locker happened to be up front kind of by the office. And one morning we were selling weed, or I was selling weed, and there was a little cul-de-sac behind the office. And we were over there doing that, and you know, we're getting high and selling that, and I felt this tap on my shoulder, and sure enough, it was the principal, and I ended up getting arrested. But this was back in the 80s. I'm 49, so this was a long time ago. And it was in California, so I didn't do any jail time. I got put on probation until I was 18, was kind of asked to maybe move away from my dad and stepmom and my brothers and go live with my mom up in way far up in Northern California in this little kind of hick town and out of the Bay Area. All I did was, you know, and I told all the promises, oh yeah, I want to change. I'm going to make a change. This is going to be good. And I'm going to do all this stuff, learning from early on to say the things that just please people, you know. All I did was pick up my board, wipe off all the players, and just put it down up there. And within a matter of months, I was doing the same stuff, you know.
So your first geographical change happened in 8th grade.
Yes. Yeah. Got through high school, just repeated the same stuff. Barely graduated through high school. Was always the guy that was, before we'd go out to a party, I'm already loaded, you know. I remember the first party I went to up in Clear Lake. I show up at this guy's house, and I was like, where's everything? And they're like, well, they're waiting for stuff to get here. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, do you have a shed around here? And they're like, yeah, in the back. And they said, well, where are you going? I'm like, well, I came here to get the party, and I know you got a lawnmower out there that's got gasoline in it, so I'm going to go have some gas. And I remember these guys just kind of looked at me, and I was like, oh. But eventually I found a crew that was kind of similar to me and did the same stuff, so it worked out. But
you know, I've told you many times that of all the years of hearing drug stories, you were the first person that admitted to looking for gas to huff.
oh, yeah.
To start the party going.
Well, and really what it was is that thing that I learned to quiet in middle school, that this noise in my head, like, had to get stopped. And whether it was alcohol or drugs or whatever, that stuff quieted down. And I felt uncomfortable in certain situations, and I needed to quiet it down, and that was a way to go do it.
That's a strange way, though.
Yeah, but it's fun when everything starts going wah.
So it's probably the same thing as people who huff duster now, but
Yes.
it's
Yes. And later
the
on,
very Section 8 way of getting
yes.
high.
Well, and later on in life, I learned not to huff right out of a gas can.
Put it on a rag.
No, I learned I wasn't that one. But I would take the aerosol cans and just put a rag over them,
Okay.
and then
Like a grown-up.
yeah, like a grown up. Yeah, I matured. my home life there, there was some more drinking there at that house with my mom and my stepdad. My stepdad is a phenomenal guy now. He doesn't drink anymore. Amazing guy now. But, stuff happens. You grow up in a home where there's alcohol and stuff happens that shouldn't happen. But I dealt with it because I was kind of allowed to drink. I thought that was a plus.
Fair trade.
A fair trade, yeah. And, no big consequences in high school. Some wrecked cars. Nothing, super crazy. When I graduated high school, I mean, stuff like taking acid at school and, just a normal, I thought was normal stuff for everyone to do.
Well, I mean, kind of with people like us. I did acid in school too.
Yeah, I thought
kind of was the point of going to high school, to discover new drugs.
Yes.
To get high with new people.
Yeah.
That's what life was about.
Yeah, and to take things, especially when someone tells you, here, take this, and you're like, okay. And then, like, what's it going to do? I don't know.
But you ask, what's it going to do after you take it?
Yes, yeah. But I loved drinking. I don't know why, but it was just, like, I just loved the feeling of getting really drunk. I don't know. I think that was my favorite of all of them, besides acid. I got in the crank, and the first time I experienced...
That's a very California way of saying it, because I'm old too. But crank was specifically the biker stuff,
yes,
or the stuff from California. Everything else was called glass or, meth, obviously. But
yeah.
Crank is very specific, I think, to a time period.
So where I lived in California, the Redwood Run would come through there, and all the Hells Angels would come through our town.
That makes sense.
There was a lot of crank. There was several daycares shut down where they were cooking crank in the back. A lot of trailer parks in Clear Lake and stuff like that. So there's a lot of crank. The first time I was turned on to crank, I spent the night at a friend's house, woke up. I had to be at work at Safeway bagging groceries, and I was just tore up. And he goes, here, try this. And I was like, oh, all right. And he lined it out, and he was coming into work like 6 hours later. And, man, I met him in the parking lot, like, well, you got more? And I mean, it was amazing. Like, I was bagging groceries and chewing gum as fast as I could. I had no idea what was going on, man. I was like, wow. The rest of high school, it was kind of just that, Throughout high school, this thing in my head that was always there was getting a little bit louder, and that was the first time I kind of started messing around with lighters and, like, hurting myself, I guess. Taking the lighters, putting them upside down and putting them on your arm and stuff. That quieted whatever was going on in my head as well, which isn't really, I don't know if it's related to drugs and alcohol, but...
I don't know, because I know several people that were cutters and they're also alcoholics, and it's that same mental obsession. And if I feel different than I felt before, it'll go away, and it kind of makes sense. If you need to feel different than what you are now, let me burn myself with a lighter because I'm going to feel different.
Yeah, that was definitely me, and that thing in my brain was getting louder was also saying, "Oh, there's no place for you. Like, look at your brothers and everyone else; they're doing way better. Like, and people around you are doing better. Like, you're constantly messing up. You're an idiot. You're always gonna fail. Nothing ever seems to work out in your life. Other than getting loaded, that always worked out great.
You're also the black sheep.
Yeah. And are you the black sheep?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
My sister, who's a wonderful person. Have I ever told you that, Casey? You're great. She works for the sheriff's department in Ocean County, and that sheriff's department raided my house for me. My sister went to Seton Hall University and studied law. Works for the sheriff's department. She has a house. She's married. She has a dog. She is what I would call normal, as normal as you get in my family, but a functioning adult. I was just born an alcoholic, and we deal with life in different ways. But yes, I would be the black sheep when your sister's great at school and is completely normal, and you're getting arrested again. Or you're on the news again. It's a different story. It's for a different video.
Or in the hospital again, in my case. In the hospital again, yeah. That was me. I mean, I grew up hours away from my brothers, but for all purposes, they were the ones doing better. And in my mom and stepdad's house, it was just me. My mom and stepdad had no other kids there, and so it was just me kind of getting messed up. I graduated high school with this, once again, learning to lie to get what I want. I'm going to go to junior college, and I'm going to wrestle and whatever else, just getting away. And I was pretty good at that, at coming up with the lies, like we all are, coming up with the lies, making it look good, but I'm secretly down inside, I just want to get away from stuff. So I go to a junior college. It didn't really last long. Continued with drinking and partying up there. It was funny because throughout all my high school and everything else, it's kind of, people used to ask me like, oh, well, what about girls and stuff? I said, yeah, there was girls, but I never had a girlfriend because they would want me to get sober. And I was like, no, I got, this is way more important than being in a relationship with a girl. Like it didn't really bother me because I always had alcohol and drugs to go back to. So within, I guess, 3 years, my life just drastically fell off. I didn't last at the college. I came back home to Clear Lake for the summer, got way into crank, took off again, and wanted to just be on my own, away from everybody. And because they were the ones holding me back. They just didn't know like how to live life. They were the problem. Get me out of here. And once again, picked up my board and went to another place, found trouble there again. Lived down in Santa Barbara, bounced around from house to house, and got really messed up. Those last 3 years, probably from 19 to 21, drugs and alcohol became kind of the necessity, but they also became a really big burden. Like it just was a drag. Like it stopped being fun. It stopped being fun in high school, but I just thought I'd ride it out. There was a failed suicide attempt, and not a lot of homelessness. I mean, just...
Well, any homelessness is not normal.
But getting kicked out, getting kicked out of places. And I remember one time I got kicked out, and I said, fine, I'm going to show all them, and I'm going to go live on my own. And I lasted like 2 weeks, and there was an eviction notice, and I was like, oh, man, still not thinking that I had the problem,
I always think back to like how I always had it together and I was successful because as long as I had a place to live and I had a car and a job, I was good. I might be miserable and I might be addicted to a bunch of things, but it's all good. Then I look back and like I had to buy a house because I was getting the cops coming to my apartment all the time. Then I left there and got a house like a grown up, paying a mortgage. Didn't last a year. The house got foreclosed on. I moved downtown into Kansas City. Immediately, cops involved, had to move somewhere else. And like looking back now, like maybe it was a problem in 2004. I thought those were the good times. They were amazing times, but my moments of being a rock star were actually horrible.
Yeah.
And the rest of the world probably seen it as that. But,
oh, yeah. And
I was never homeless, but I lost a lot of homes.
Yeah. And how you think you're seeing the world, at least I did, and I was a part of the world, but I was really, especially in Santa Barbara those last 3 years, my world revolved around like 3 or 4 blocks. That was it. The place I was living, there was a beach, and then the liquor store. They were all right in that area, and I didn't go anywhere. But I thought I was on it, and just to show the kind of people I was around and how life repeats itself. So when I got out of the mental hospital for trying to kill myself, I showed up back at the place I was living, and they said, hey, we're getting kicked out. And I was like, oh, okay, great. But we got one more night. And I was like, oh, okay. And they were a party, and there was a bunch of liquor, and I went to go grab like a beer or something. They said, oh, no. You tried to kill yourself when you were drunk. I was like, oh, right. I was like, oh. And they said, but here's a whole table full of drugs. You can go for that all you want. That made perfect sense. I was like, yeah, all right. And I got back into crank again.
Well, if it kept you off the alcohol, maybe that's what was important.
Yeah, I guess. In that 3 years, lost jobs because they would say, hey, if you come in here smelling and looking like that again, you're going to be gone. And I couldn't even make a day without coming in, being all tore up, and they'd be like, you're out. And it was always, oh, it's your fault, man. Why can't you just accept me for who I am? March 3rd, 1996, I was getting ready to do another geographical, pick my board up and move. And I had lost my license. I got a DUI. I drove my car into a house. And a house. It was the house's fault, right? My parents were coming down. My dad and my stepmom were coming down to move me to Monterey. I was going to live in the garage of my aunt's house or something and be this oceanographer person. Another lie just to get away, right? I saw my parents in the morning, like every good 21-year-old alcoholic, like, hey, you're taking me out to breakfast, right? My parents, great, all right, invite all my friends, the crew that I had, get them all there. And went out to breakfast, came back, and it was on, one last time. And I remember eating some acid and drinking and whatever else. And then I remember bits and pieces of the next couple of months. And I remember waking up in a hospital bed again, and my dad standing over me and said, you've been here for 2 months. And you fell off a 20-foot roof onto a cement driveway. My coma for 3-4 days. And it was really cool because something happened in that, I remember my dad told me this story, and I said, he said that I asked him immediately after I asked him, I said, so what's next? And and my dad goes, well, your mom and my mom had come down, the doctors, we decided, we think it's good for you to go into a rehab. And I had never heard of AA or rehab. And he said, I just sank back in the bed and just went like, it's gonna end. All this madness and all this whatever, it's gonna end. I know this is a long story of how I got to Blake's house, but went into a rehab not knowing anything, originally just wanting to learn how to drink beer normally and eat some acid every now and then.
I just wanted to learn how to smoke weed and enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted.
Yeah, but I can't.
No, I hate weed. I wish I could.
Oh, man.
It's legal.
Yeah.
Everyone has it. But no, I can't stand it.
I know. Remember the first time you smoked weed? I do. And I was like, I'm going to do this the rest of my life.
Yes.
6th grade.
There was...
Like...
But back then it was different. Because I remember the first time it changed. Me and Chris Duncan were in the woods. I think Nirvana Unplugged was about to come on for the first time on MTV. Smoking like normal. But something happened. It felt like I was there forever. And then I hear my heart. Oh, yeah. And I'm like, does Chris know this? Wait, what's Chris doing? And something happened. And from that day on, every time I smoked weed, it was like being on acid. Oh, every time. Boy. But trust me, I tried many times to enjoy it over the next 20 years. But I still couldn't. Yeah.
You always, this time is going to be different.
Well, yeah.
The last couple of years of me smoking weed, no joke, I remember riding the city bus in Santa Barbara, going to work as a painter. It was stupid. And I'm sitting there thinking, I think I'm shitting my pants. And putting my hands in my pants and smelling and going to the guy next to me, does that smell like poo? And just, I would paranoid me so bad I didn't want to do it.
That's not just paranoid, that's insane.
I felt all hot down there. I don't know.
Now I see why you had to go to the mental hospital. Yeah. Oh, my God.
It was horrible. At the mental hospital, one of my friends that I ran with came to visit me, and he had just watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So he would just go, where's Nurse Ratched? Where's Nurse Ratched? Like, stop, dude. But, yeah, I got in the rehab, and it was the first thing that ever made sense. I don't know. It just clicked.
You actually are the one-chip wonder.
Yeah. My March 3rd, 1996, and that's it blows my mind. Because I look at it and I go, I have not done this stuff right, and I haven't been as involved as I need to be over the years. But there's some things that I learned early on that to this day I still do, the keep it simple and enlarge my spiritual life and practice these steps. Don't just say them in a meeting and say all the fancy words. Actually do them,
So you learned about AA in rehab, and I know you got 20, how many years sober?
28.
20, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And no, I didn't get sober when I was like 18 or sober 21.
So 28 years sober, you know a lot about the program. And I found that out at Blake's the first time you came, because there's a Wednesday night meeting. And the best thing about that meeting was at Blake's, we had to go to fellowship every single night. Until you were there for maybe 4 months, he might give you a day off. It was just horrible. So you have to go to Blake, you have to go to fellowship every single night. And then once a week, you get this magical day off where this guy comes to bring a meeting to Blake's. And it's like the day off of the week. Like, I work 6 days to get Wednesday off. So you would come and you'd read the big book and like, who cares? This is so stupid. Whatever. It was a nice break from going to fellowship. But how did you get to...
So when I moved to Florida in 2005 and got, plugged in AA, and I met this guy named Chris. Everyone knows Tattoo Chris. We were friends for a long time, and after a while, he asked me to be a sponsor, which I was like, well, yeah, Florida, totally. So I was sponsoring him, and he invited me over to Blake's every now and then for a little bit, and then he passed away, and Blake called me up and asked me if I wanted to continue doing the meeting that Chris did, and I said, sure, I'd love to do it. And it was really cool because it was at a time in my life where I was married, I had 2 little kids, so I wasn't really involved in AA, but I've seen God pull me back in over the years. He provides that fellowship that I need. So I said, yeah, we just started reading the book and talking about it, and no real big formats. I don't know, I'm not doing it exactly the same way that Chris did, I'm sure. It's been a lot of fun, and that's where I met Angry Leroy. because you were angry.
So we would have this meeting every Wednesday, and we'd go through the book. And I don't know how long you were there when COVID happened. I know there was some time you couldn't come. So we were all reading the book together. We'd have our own little COVID meetings because we couldn't go to fellowship. So I'm getting bombarded with big book crap. Like, I have to do this an hour a day. It's a small price to pay, whatever. I'll deal with it. I'm sober. I'll deal with the big book. And it just was like repetitive and who cares? And blah, 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 big book, blah, blah, blah. Something happened one day. I mean, I think I was like almost a year sober. You know, I had a job, I had money, I had a girlfriend, I was about to get my license. I had everything that I thought I needed. I was fucking miserable. And I don't know why. Well, I do know why now. But I was fucking miserable. And there was a moment when I won't go into details. I do sometimes, but it'll get me banned from YouTube. I had this extravagant plan of how I was going to extract my revenge on all the people who made me this way, because it's all their fault.
Yeah, always.
And the people at work, the people I live with, the people in my life, they all have to pay. That happened on a Wednesday, and throughout the day, I'm plotting this thing out in my head, and I'm working this job where I listen to music all day, and this really obscure band came on that it stuck in my head because I hadn't heard them in so long. It was a band called The Adolescents, and it was a song called Amoeba. Whatever, I haven't heard it in a while. Probably 20 years. And later that day, as I'm still plotting my revenge, walking from my house over to where the meeting is, you pull up, and you happen to be playing The Adolescents.
Yes. Yeah.
So this 1 in 100 million songs, like 1 in 100 million band, you then get the same song. Like the odds of that ever happening ever again is billions to one. And something told me, pay attention. So I was like, whatever, fuck you, pay attention. Went to the meeting, sat down. I have my, plotting my revenge in my head, how epic it'll be on the news and people remember me for what I did. And we happened to be reading the 4-step and a certain 4-step prayer. I think it's the 4-step prayer. The sick man's prayer.
Yeah.
The 4-step prayer?
I don't really know.
I don't know.
I probably should.
Well, I should too.
Yeah.
But it was a prayer about when you're angry to pray for the other person. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why, but that moment something clicked. And I had this weird voice in my head say, oh, you're the asshole. And I started thinking about all this stuff I was going through at work, all the stuff I was going through in my life, and everything just made sense at that moment from the big book, from that meeting. And that was the day I realized, oh, all this stuff in here does make sense. Yeah. And I started going through it again. And I went through it with a sponsor, and I went through it with you, went through it with Blake's people. That was the moment things started to make sense. But anyway, because of that, we started talking, and we learned a lot about music that we have in common. And because me and you would talk, somehow you brought the angry Leroy into a little less angry Leroy, and a little less angry. Yeah. And because of that, I started getting into that.
And I said angry
when I go like that.
It's the big book. That's the only thing that's changed.
It should be holding here.
Yeah. And when I said angry Leroy, and the cool part is that's not you anymore, and I love the line in the book where it talks about we've been rocketed into the fourth dimension. When I read that for the first time in that recovery center I was at, which was just a farmhouse in Woodland, which was up by Davis in California. It was a crazy place. When I read that line, I was like, I want that. That's what I've been searching for my whole life. A whole new outlook on life, a whole new outlook on the people that are in it. That's why I did drugs. I only needed a new outlook. And I was like, I want to get that rocketed in the fourth dimension experience.
Well, I think rocketed in the fourth dimension is kind of like doing acid.
Yeah.
Because that's,
yeah.
You go to a place you can't explain.
Yep.
A place that's unimaginable. Other people could never understand.
Yeah.
But we understand, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
And then when you do this and you get rocketed into this weird dimension where just everything changes.
Yeah.
And you can't explain it to normal people, but other people that do this, they understand and they're in that same dimension.
Oh, yeah.
And I like that line too, because when this was written, a rocket was the most amazing cutting edge technology.
Yeah.
It was brand new. So to be rocketed into that's think of all the crazy technology we have and everything that's been invented. It's better than that.
Yeah. No, yeah, and it's so true. And that line, I used to look at it and go this book was written for us. We run on feelings, and I want that. When someone says, hey, I took this pill and I was blasted over here, I want to experience that. So I read this line and I'm like, oh, I want to go there, to that fourth dimension. And once you get there, you don't ever want to come back. And the better part is not only that, but when you see it in other people's lives, I saw that transformation in yours. And I see it. I love going to Blake's house because I get to see that over time in people. And unfortunately, you see the other side where people don't make it, and you know, you lose people. That's part of life, you know. But when you see that transformation in someone's life, like, you know, they've connected with a higher power, and they're practicing these principles, not just, okay, I've connected with a higher power, now I'm going to rest on my laurels. And no, you got to keep moving. You got to keep, you know, these principles going. It is a blessing beyond anything imaginable.
That's a very big thing, that people get to that fourth dimension and then say, well, I'm done. I'm non-alcoholic anymore. And I always tell it people, because I go to lots of detox meetings and lots of halfway house meetings, and if all you're doing to stay sober is living in a halfway house, you're going to get drunk when you leave. If all you're doing to stay sober is going to meetings, when you stop going to meetings, you're going to get drunk. To get into that fourth dimension kind of takes some work.
Yeah.
But when you stop doing that work, guess what? You're probably going to get drunk.
Yeah.
And resting on your laurels is a big thing, because so many people get a year or 2 years and say, well, I can take some days off from my home group and I can stop doing my commitments. And guess what? They get drunk.
Yeah.
And we talked about that the other night. How do you not end up drunk again? You continue to enlarge your spiritual life. And that's different for everybody. Some people go to church. Some people I know have tons of sponsees. You know, that doesn't work for me because all my sponsees have sucked. But
you stayed sober, so it worked.
Yes. Most of them have it. To, you know, increase my spiritual life, I do lots of meetings, you know, service commitments. I like going and seeing people kind of in the gutter, because it reminds me where I came from and how bad it gets immediately. With the new drugs that are out there, it's gotten a lot worse. It's not gotten better. I do lots of service commitments. And the thing about my commitments is, no matter what, I'm not going to miss them. I don't miss my home group. I work a lot, and work really conflicts with my schedule, but I refuse to ever miss those commitments. And that's what keeps me going.
Yeah.
Doing this. You know, I am very shy, and I don't like speaking in front of people. I don't like raising my hand at meetings. Like, I sound like an idiot. I know, it's okay. But sitting here, I can say some other things that might one day help somebody. So this is what I do to continue to enlarge my spiritual life. Is it what the book says to do? Not really. But
It's simple. You learn your own ways of enlarging your spiritual life, and you got to practice those. And there's certain words in the big book that I love. Conception, right? It says, pick your own conception of God, right? And conception is when a man and a woman get together and the sperm goes to the egg.
there might be some people who don't know about that.
Oh, well, the sperm goes. I don't know how to swim like a sperm, but swim like a sperm, and it goes into the egg, and it makes life. What's in here and what's in here makes a life. That's conception. So the way it was explained to me is, you just got to have a beginning, because once you are willing to have that beginning, what is that, step 2? It's gonna make it its life of its own. Just like that baby growing in the belly of the woman, it's gonna grow into a baby, and your spiritual life's not going to be, well, it starts off as a baby, I guess, but it's going to grow. And there's certain things that you can do that are going to continue the growth. And there's certain things that you can do that are going to hinder that growth, you know? And we've all done things in recovery that hinder our growth. And we've done things that spur it on. And one of the very first ones for me was simple. I was living in a halfway house, you know, with 6 other guys in a 3-bedroom house. It was a duplex and just a regular family on the other side. I always felt bad for them because, man, it was horrible. And
Was it in California?
Yeah, in California. And my sponsor said, so I asked him, how do I enlarge my spiritual life? And he said, well, pick something. And I said, okay, I think selfishness is anti-spiritual kind of stuff. Like, how do I think about other people and not be selfish? He goes, buy your favorite candy, go home to that halfway house and give it all away. It's something simple as that, but do it with the intent, with the motivation of, I'm learning how to do this stuff. No one knows how to do that right away out of the gate. So I did stupid stuff like that. It worked.
Not being part of food stamp fraud.
Right. Not being, oh man, gosh. But I did.
Well, talk about that a little so you can.
So
There was a time when you were broke.
Yes.
And living the halfway house life.
Yep.
And you've seen other people that were living well from doing something not spiritual.
Yes, from doing food stamp frauds. And I was working 2-3 jobs just trying to pay rent, and we had no managers living in our house. It was just these guys run by the rehab, and we just kind of fended for ourselves. You know,
Lord of the Flies halfway house.
it was, but I learned so much living there, you know. I would see those guys continually get a dirty drug test and get bounced out of the house, or do something and get kicked out of the house. But I did like smoking their cigarettes because I was smoking GPCs because that's all I could afford. And they had Camels, man. So anytime I could, bum one of their Camels, like I was like, oh, give me a Camel. But, and it taught me like, how do I treat people when I come home and I'm hungry and somebody ate my last ramen noodle? It's stupid stuff, but to alcoholics, that's the stuff that sends us off the deep edge.
Mm-hmm.
How do I handle that in a healthy manner? Because I never did that before. And learning those things and like, all right, God, show me how to do this. Well, it wasn't God back then. It was just a higher power. But and trusting that process of like, all right, be honest, do the right thing.
That's why I like the meetings I do at Sober Living, because you'll have people that it is the worst moment of their life and they're explaining why, and it's because their roommate took their peanut butter.
Yeah.
Or their roommate snores too loud and they can't sleep. And that's when you can actually have the opportunity to explain to somebody like, this is nothing. And if you can't deal with this, you're not dealing with anything when you get out of here. And you deal with those little halfway house problems to learn how to be an adult. Yeah. Because we all spent many years not knowing how to be an adult. We were drunk or blacked out or on drugs, whatever. We didn't learn how to deal with people the right way.
Yeah.
And part of that growing up in a halfway house, it's the people that make it are usually people that went through that suffering and stayed spiritual. And we were talking about enlarging your spiritual life. I'd say all my free time is doing some recovery stuff, whether it's making videos or writing recovery songs that I do it just to make me laugh, bringing meetings to detox, whatever I do, go wherever I can. I have to do a lot of stuff constantly because when I was using drugs and I was high, I was constantly high. Besides that, I was constantly miserable. There's definitely people that have done more drugs than me. There's definitely people that have been locked up way more than me. I've yet to meet anyone who could explain they were more miserable than me. Because my level of misery, especially towards the end, it wasn't even suicidal. It was just, I'm so disappointed I woke up because I have to be alive. And everything made me angry. And I could find no joy in anything. And I tried. If I just meet this girl, I'll be happy. If I just get a raise, I'll be happy. If I just do this, I'll be happy. But nothing ever made me happy. Yep. And those brief little moments when I took enough Xanax and Adderall at the same time to feel a little bit of enjoyment when I went out to eat with the wife, I was so miserable. Now that I'm on the flip side, I have to constantly do stuff because I cannot rest on my laurels whatsoever. No. Because my misery is just around the corner waiting for me to come back and give it a hug.
Yeah.
So I spend as much time as possible doing these things. I don't think everybody else has to. Personally, I do.
I think you're absolutely right. One of the principles I love is the attraction rather than promotion thing of AA. And I wasn't, like you were saying, as angry and whatever. But those last 3 years, I saw no future. And the insanity in my brain of just dumb thinking. I'm so far... I don't want to say I'm so far from that because in a blink of an eye, I can unfortunately be back there, sometimes with some stupid decisions. But to be set free from that, oh my gosh. And it is true, like that book says, been rocketed into that fourth dimension. And man, like the current sponsor I have now, who I've had for years and years, he has kids and I have kids. And his kids are, off in college. And he always reminds me, he goes, if your kids go down this road of alcohol and drugs, which they very may well be, what they see in your life is what they're going to think of 12 steps, whether it's worth it or not. And then on the flip side, like, I think that for the rest of the world, like people that know that I've gone through the 12 steps, do they look at my life and go, whoa, those 12 steps changed that person's life? Or do they just go, he's just like everybody else? You know what I mean? Like, at work, when I'm just sitting around and everyone's complaining about work and everything, do I jump in and be that whiner and complainer? Sometimes, but also do I go, you know what? Like, it's a choice. You don't have to come to work. You could go get another job or something, trying to.
This is where I fail daily.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to. I mean, I'm not always the best at it, but there's so much that this program's taught me that rocketed into the fourth, and my spiritual life has grown and looks completely different from what it did in the beginning. I mean, I ended up becoming a Christian and, just like a good alcoholic, taking that to the extreme. I wanted to be a youth pastor, and that's what eventually led me out here working in a church. But then I was like, I like working in a church, but I also like being out in the world, and out and around people that may be drunks or whatever, because I want them to see what God's done in my life. This transformation that's happened from this wreck to now this thing that has this joy and these 12 steps has changed my life forever. And yeah, I want them to. I don't have a lot of friends that are in. I tend to hang out more with people that aren't in AA. I don't know why. It's just been ever since getting sober. It's kind of weird.
I think most of my friends are recovery friends, and I kind of like to show that off too. That's the whole point of why I started all the stuff I'm doing, was to specifically target drug addicts and let drug addicts know that the big book works for them, because I didn't know it. I might have been told it, but I didn't know it.
Yeah.
And, there's other programs you can go, and I don't think their book works as good as this one.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I like that line in the back where it says, stay on the firing line. Does that mean stay in the drug dens? Stay in the bars? I mean, I don't know, because that's the fire. To me, that's the firing line, right? Like, stay in the mix. Don't just stay huddled up in AA meetings. That's a whole nother thing we can get into, but.
That whole point, too, about.
Oh, my bad.
No, because I don't have anything written down, so I keep going all over the place. I was thinking today how if she read the book, how different her life would be. But
Do you think she's one of us?
no.
And I've wondered about that, because my wife, she drinks. She's not one of us, right? But she holds it down. She's not, and she's like, I think I want to read the big book. And I really wonder, I go, but I don't know if it makes sense to you.
Well, I think if you're not an alcoholic and you read it, it can still work, just in a different way.
Yeah.
Because they'll go through that beginning that, are you a moderate drinker? Are you the heavy drinker? And when they, my mom reads it and she's like, well, not any of these, I think it could help everybody. But at the same time, if my mom were to read the big book, she might learn how to handle life in different ways and might, change her outlook. But she also isn't fighting off demons every day. She doesn't wake up with any second some mental obsession can take over and reroute her entire day, whether it's anger, jealousy, rage, whatever those things are that I'm still addicted to, that come and bite me in the ass. I don't think she needs to work the program that way. So that's one of the reasons I need to work it so hard, because I love drugs. To an extent, I loved alcohol. I love the way it made me feel. But I also love money, and I love looking at women's boobs.
Yeah.
And I like stealing, and I like sneaking into train yards and doing just all kinds of illegal and horrible stuff that'll ruin my life. And at any moment in the day, one of those things can take over.
Yeah.
That's it. I am addicted to anything that makes me feel a little different than how I woke up.
Yeah. As you said that, it reminded me of how I learned to pray and get in contact with my higher power. I was in the rehab. There was this girl that her and I were the youngest there, and we had spent some time out in the pool shed or the pump house behind, doing our thing. And so I thought we were together, and this new guy comes in.
Did you know about rehab romances at the time?
I didn't know whatever that is. I just knew about what I was doing.
So you stumbled into it accidentally.
Yeah. This new guy comes in, and she's totally talking to him, and I thought we were things. It sent me off, And I didn't have drugs. I mean, I could have got drugs or alcohol in rehab. You can always figure out a way. But I didn't want to do that. And I went back to, if I hurt myself, my mind will shut up. And I grabbed a razor upstairs and started hacking on my chest. But I went and got help. I went and talked to my counselor, and I said, I don't know what to do. Sent me to the psycho doctor. Gives me a bottle of pills. He goes, in the morning, take one of these, get back and give the stuff to my counselor. And he says, okay, come see me in the morning. That night before going to bed, there was a guy in the house, an older guy, and he was getting ready to leave in a couple of weeks. And a guy that I kind of like, he had like this glow, just happy. And he was sitting at the edge of his bed, and he was kind of like praying or whatever. And I didn't know he was praying, but he was, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And he goes, I'm praying. I'm asking for help because I can't do it. And I go, does it work? He goes, yeah, I think it does. It's been working so far. And I remember asking him, like, you think I could do that? And he goes, you think you need help? And I go, And he goes, dude, you just cut your chest up because of some chick. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, dude, get down here. Let me show you how to do it. And that was it. And that started my growth towards a higher power, I should say. Because that morning, I remember somehow I never took a pill. And I've never taken a pill, in these 28 years. And I've never hurt myself on purpose in these 28 years to get rid of this brain thing. That was huge for me to have that thing. I don't know if you're similar, like where your brain shut off.
Yes.
Oh, man.
That's the first time I prayed I was tricked into it, and I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
But that brought me back to the point of, my mom or my sister and why, they're not religious. They're not spiritual, I don't think. But they kind of don't need to be because they don't have the same problems we do.
Yeah.
So I think your wife or normal people could read the big book and they could understand, but they're not like us.
No.
I need God every moment of the day. When I get cut off, I need God. When I'm standing in line behind somebody at Wawa and he's taking too long and I'm thinking about going up the back of his head, I need God.
Yeah.
When I see my boss, I need God real bad.
Yeah.
So I don't think normal people, they don't have that.
And like you said about that word rocketed, right? I don't need it like just a little bit. Like I need like the full shit. I need all that because I'm gonna like I want it to hit me like a friggin' freight train.
Yeah, I didn't drink a little bit. I didn't get high a little bit.
No.
I got as drunk or high as possible. So when I need God, I need that rocket to go off. Yeah. And I need all of it now.
I like that line. I need that rocket to go off. Yeah, that's it, man. Like and I remember that, like understanding this sobriety thing and going and realizing okay, if I can take half of the energy I put into messing my life up, because those last 4 or 5 years, it was all or nothing. Like I didn't care anymore, especially after living through suicide attempt and stuff. I was like, oh, I'm invincible. So I got to do everything I can, right, to mess myself up as much as I want. And I go, if I can take half that energy and put it into this program, like why stop? There's a really cool punk band called Los Dryhubers. I saw them in Santa Cruz. And they have this song, Curvo Peligrosa, No Stopping, but they sing it in Spanish. And it's like, dangerous curve up ahead, don't stop. Just go, man, go. And I think that's like somewhat of AA sometimes too. Like, I didn't get sober to slow down, and be like, okay, let me sit over here and live my good sober life. Especially at 21. Like, no, I wanted to still ride my skateboard and go to punk shows and have a blast and live life. I love that when it says we'll go anywhere anyone else can. The stuff that I've gotten to do sober is amazing. I got some words that I like that are some of my favorite words in the big book. Conception, harbor, when we're harboring a resentment, which is like building them up in our brain and like shutting it off to the sunlight of the spirit, that whole thing. Like, especially living here, you see harbors. They're things that are built to weather storms. And I can...
to hold other things back.
Yes. And then trudge. Trudge the road to happy destiny. To me, trudge is like a I don't know, this is gonna sound weird, but like a blue collar word. Someone that's just tough and can just get through the daily grind.
For some reason, when I hear trudge, I envision walking in snow. It sucks and it's so much work, but you have to do it to get anywhere.
Yeah.
And you're usually wet and covered in salt and you're filthy and you're sweaty, but you have to keep on going.
Yep. Looking up that word, it means, one of the meanings is to walk with a purpose. There's been so many times that I think, for me, one of the raddest things that I feel like God's really hooked me up with is just to be a stubborn guy that can just go, okay, I can move my foot. Because now, like, I only got to move one foot. And then my higher power, God, gets to move that other foot, and that's what I can move one foot. That's easy to do. Let the other foot be moved by your higher power, by your enlarging your spiritual life. And
a lot of the time, trudging is hard.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it sucks.
Yeah.
But we have to keep doing it.
Yeah. And I'm not the brightest guy in the thing, but I'm just dumb enough to move one foot at a time. And it's worked out. I mean, it's worked out all these years that, I haven't drank or done drugs or huffed any gas, especially when I'm like putting it in, the gas car. It's right there,
First word I had to really look up was psychic, because when I read in the doctor's opinion that this thing called a psychic change, I hear psychic and I think of Miss Cleo and tarot cards, and it made no sense to me. And when I looked it up and psychic meant of the spirit or the soul, I was like, oh yeah, because my spirit sucks and my soul is filthy. Yes. I do need a psychic change.
Yeah.
And that made sense. The way the big book is written is unbelievable, because not only does it have meaning and purpose, but the descriptive words, the description of the quicksand moving in from all directions, and that is gnarly. Hopelessness and remorse of the next day, like just the description of how bad it is when you're still drinking. It's just unbelievable. It could have been a bestseller, a Tom Clancy book.
Yeah.
And Bill Wilson was still writing.
And it's a trip because, new in AA, you hear like, this book never gets old. You always learn something new. And I'm a 21-year-old kid, and I'm hearing this from these guys. I'm like, yeah, right. How is that possible? And here I am years later reading it, and I'm like, just last Wednesday, I learned like that quicksand thing. I got that image of like, oh, yeah, every little bit I step, I'm just going to go suck down more and more.
Gets worse.
It is. I'm always learning something new. And that to me is the trudge. If I'm stubborn enough to go find a lawnmower to huff gas out of so I can get high, I got to be stubborn enough to walk this stuff out.
This life's amazing.
Yeah.
And I just made it through another day.
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with you? Why do you get ungrateful so fast? A normal person gets a flat tire, they call AAA. An alcoholic gets a flat tire, they call the suicide hotline. Because for us, the world's always ending.
Oh, yeah. It's the best in the world. I love, like, Alcoholics Anonymous. I love when people say, oh, you're an alcoholic. Yeah. Well, to me, when I hear alcoholic, I hear someone who's trudging the road to happy destiny, putting in the work, has admitted several things about their lives, done some gnarly about faces, talked to people and had some really hard conversations and said, this is what I did. I mean, that's not fun to do, to go to someone and be like, yeah, I did that, but is able to do that stuff. And that to me is an alcoholic.
So I'm glad that I'm an alcoholic. I mean,
Me too.
I'm a drug addict, but I'm an alcoholic because I get this thing.
Yeah.
And, there's people living in the world today that are selfish, self-centered, or they're angry, or they don't know how to deal with life, and they just go home and go to sleep. But because I'm an alcoholic, I have all those problems, and I have a solution to get through all those problems. And it's cool that it makes me not drink and not stick needles in myself and makes me not snort pills. That's great.
Yeah.
But it's all the other stuff that's important. The learning how to deal with situations that used to set me off, whether with violence or with drugs. Learning patience, learning tolerance, learning to pray every night to say, God, just make me a little more less selfish tomorrow, a little less greedy. Please help me just be slightly a better person tomorrow than I was today. Because I'm an alcoholic, I have access to all that stuff. Most people don't.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful prize we get for the years of horrible stuff that we did.
Yeah, exactly. And to me, I mean, it's almost an unfair trade-off. For a time in my life, drugs and alcohol were really fun. And then it got to where it wasn't, but I couldn't get out. It got me sucked in. And I did some horrible things to people. And now I live this life that, to me, is better than I could ever dream. You go back and you make amends to those people and stuff. Yeah, I love the line in there that says that this spiritual life will solve all your problems, not just drugs and alcohol, and I mean, alcohol is talked about in the first step, and that's it. It's never talked about again, and it teaches me how to not freak out when someone eats my last ramen noodles, in a halfway house, right? 98% of this stuff plays out in relationships, and how I handle that. Like, I carry it into my marriage, like, all right, I can't avoid conflict, but how do I resolve it in a healthy way? I've never been fired from a job. I've quit, but I've always quit in a healthy way, where they said, okay, you can come back if you want. The church that I left working for, I still go to that church today. My wife and I do Sunday school with little kids, like toddlers. We don't really... I mean, it's not like we're teaching anything, but we hang out and play, and it's fun.
I'm just thinking about quitting and being asked back because I'd like to quit and burn the place to the ground.
But here's the thing.
I'm kidding.
No, but that's the thing. Like, we have those thoughts. We can't get away from that. But you don't.
Yes.
Right? And every day that you make it through and you go, okay, I didn't punch anybody in the face. That's a big deal sometimes. And some people might be like, well, that's what normal. Why would you punch somebody in the face? That's not what a normal person does. Yeah, I'm not normal. And my mind doesn't have...
It's been 5 years since I punched someone in the face, and it's pretty amazing.
That's awesome, man. Like, celebrate that. Get excited. And other people may look at you like, huh? Yeah, but you know what goes off in my mind? My mind tells me to do that. You don't act on that stuff, right?
Well, we'll see. It's only probably 9 o'clock.
I love the analogies I've learned in AA, or the little mottos or sayings. There's one I really love the most. It's about a guy that goes walking and he falls into a hole, right? And he falls into this hole. It's a big, deep hole. It's way above his head. He's like, oh, man. And this preacher walks by the hole. And the preacher looks down and goes, oh, you're in the hole. That sucks, man. And the guy goes, yeah, can you help me? Can you help me? And the preacher goes, I'm in a big hurry. I'll say a prayer for you, man. Takes off, right? And the guy's like, oh, I'm in this hole still. A lawyer comes by or whatever. Like, lawyer goes, oh, man, you're in a hole. That sucks. And the guy goes, yeah, I need help. Get me out of this hole. I can't get out. I can't get out. Lawyer flips him his card, goes, hey, you call me. When you get out of there, we'll sue the guy who dug this hole. I got to go to a court case or whatever. And he's sitting there. He's so bummed. He's like, man, I can't get out. God, help me get out of this hole. Next comes his friend, bebopping down the trail, right? Boom. He looks up, his friend, he goes, hey! And his buddy looks at him and goes, oh, Steve, you're in the hole. Without even blinking an eye, his friend just jumps in the hole with him. And Steve looks at him and goes, dumbass, now we're both in this hole. And he goes, don't worry, dude. I've been here. I know how to get out. It's right over here. That, to me, is AA, you know? Because everyone's going to be stuck in a hole at some point. And people that have gone further than me know how to get out. I love it for that reason. Jump in and get in the mix. You know, like that line, stay in the firing line. And whether it's the firing line of your spiritual life, whatever it is, like that to me, I don't know, is it an analogy?
Yes.
Okay, makes sense. That's how I want to live my life.
You see these weights?
Yeah.
I had them for 6 months. Know what difference it made? Nothing. Because it didn't make a difference. I picked them up and started using them.
Bingo.
Well, if you go to a meeting and you sit there for 6 months, you're thinking, why am I still miserable? Why am I still thinking about drinking? Fucking idiot, did you pick up the weights?
Yeah.
But actually, an amazing thing, I didn't start really picking up the weights until I fell off the ladder and couldn't walk. And after I couldn't walk, I learned to walk again. And then I started realizing, you're kind of fat. You know what? God gave you a chance to walk again. God gave you this body. Don't fucking waste the time with it. Nice. And I lost 53 pounds and work out all the time.
Nice.
But I always say that to people. People are like, yeah, it's not working. Well, if you're just going to fucking meetings, you're just going to the gym watching people work out.
Yeah.